Yoducha Hashem kol maasecha means all of your creations will give you thanksgiving. And there's a diuk there on thanksgiving, meaning not understanding. Because when you have hodah, yoducha, this is an indication that it's something beyond comprehension. Right. And yet, even though we're dealing with something which is beyond comprehension, chasidecha yivarachucha. The level of someone called a chasid can yivarachu ko, can bring even that level of hodah down in a way of blessing all the way into ko, which is malchus. You get that? So that's the chiddush that usually, and we went on to say, there's a difference between tefillah and bracha. Tefillah is from below to above. Bracha is from above to below. Each one has a quality the other one doesn't have. The quality that's found in bracha is that it can be demanded and commanded to come down without any suffix, without any doubt. Right. And that's because the person giving the bracha stands in a place where he is higher than the source of where the bracha is coming from. And in maybe simpler language, the bracha comes from the Seder Ishtalshalus, right? And that means it's already come out and has some existence to it. It's already hatched from Hashem. And therefore, the person who's giving the bracha is above it and sending it down. And therefore, it's a certainty that his bracha will come true if he's such a person that can give brachas, or like a Tzadik. So that's the good quality of a bracha. The negative side is that, as we just said, it's part of the Seder Ishtalshalus already. He doesn't access something which is beyond the Seder Ishtalshalus. Whereas in tefillah, it's the opposite. You're going from below to above. And since we've sort of concluded the class by saying that just for some reason Hashem just loves the tachtonim, He loves it when we serve Him dafka from the lowest places, it arouses His very essence, it arouses His chafetz, His desire. And that creates a brand new ratzon that was never in the Seder Ishtalshalus before. That's why through prayer you can sort of change reality completely. And that's why we begin our prayers by saying, many prayers by saying, Yehi ratzon, may there be a new will, meaning there wasn't no will for such a thing. On the contrary, there was a will for the opposite in place from Hashem. There was a gezerah, a decree, and yet with a prayer you can undo the decree, you can create a new will. The negative side of a prayer is what? You can't be sure you're going to get answered because you're just basically a makabel waiting and hoping for the best. Right. So the chiddush of chasidecha yivarachucha. Therefore, what we're saying is that when the chassid can yivarachu ko, he can bring down a bracha into malchus, which is called ko, but he can do it from a place where we said it was yoducha Hashem kol maasecha. He can do it from the place of hodah, which is beyond the Seder Ishtalshalus. That's the chiddush because he brings together the milas of both tefillah and bracha. He's able to command it because it's a bracha and make sure it comes down. And yet he's able to access a level of hodah, thanksgiving, acknowledgement, which is beyond the Seder Ishtalshalus. Yeah? That's basically our class.
Safer way to go.
if you're a chassid. Okay, so the bracha and the tefillah, we said each one has a lack, but each one has an advantage. Let's just go with the positives for a second. The positive in bracha, you can command it. It's a certainty.
Tefillah can change.
Right. The positive with the tefillah is that it's from beyond the Seder Ishtalshalus, and that we're calling that a place of hodah, as opposed to a place of understanding, which is the Ishtalshalus, is a place of beyond understanding. So the chasidecha yivarachucha, the chasid's bracha is such that he can command it, it's a certainty, but it also comes from a place of hodah, from acknowledgement from beyond the Seder Ishtalshalus. Where do we see that? From the joined phrase, Yoducha Hashem kol maasecha. Yoducha comes the word hodah, and then right after we're establishing that we're dealing with a level of hodah, which is beyond the Seder Ishtalshalus, the next words are v'chasidecha yivarachucha. That your chassid, a special type of person called a chassid, can bless even from that level, all the way down into yivarachu ko, which is another way of reading yivarachucha, which means he can bring the blessing all the way down into malchus. Got it?
I'm curious, why does the bracha get stuck?
In general?
Yeah, like what's blocking it?
Adam nidum b'chol yom. A person is judged every day. So even though you prayed on Rosh Hashanah and you brought down essentially all your brachas for the whole year, nonetheless, you brought them down into the Seder Ishtalshalus, but not all the way through the Seder Ishtalshalus. So a person could have their bracha sitting in the top of the Seder Ishtalshalus, but he doesn't have the power because he's judged every day to bring it down.
So Sefer is a bucket.
It's his lack of schus.
Yeah.
Let's put it kindly.
Let's put it that way.
That's the beauty of Kohanim.
Yeah.
That the Kohanic bracha every day, as we learn in Chassidus, has the power of sending down the brachas through the Seder Yishtalshlus in a way of expedience. That's why the Kohanim are quick, and that's why they're compared to the almond tree, which sprouts from bud to fruit faster than any tree in 3 weeks. So we need our Kohanim. That's why we got Yol in the house here. Okay.
And
oh my goodness, the Kohen Gadol house.
Yes.
I was so excited about the Chiddush, the novelty. I forgot about the old staple.
the old staple.
All right. So yes, exactly. Our Kohanim, Baruch Hashem, we're blessed with Kohanim flanking both sides here.
Yeah.
All right. So going on, where do we leave off? I believe on page Mem Zayin. Yes, Mem Zayin. Second paragraph down. Al pi zeh.
Yeah.
I have more copies here if you need one more. That's fine. Al pi zeh muvan. I pretty much already said this, but we'll just say it inside quickly because he goes to something else as well. Al pi zeh muvan godel iloi habracha de chasidecha. Now we can finally understand how great it is, the bracha of the chasidecha, the chassid. That he's drawing down from a place which is normally hodah, which is beyond bracha, beyond comprehension. The bracha zu shtei mailos. This bracha has two qualities. As a review, what we just said. The amshacha is from the orein sof, which is above the ishtalshlus. Hainu sha'ali the bracha zu, that through this unique type of bracha, Naseh Ratzon Chadash, you can make a brand new will, which was never in other words, it wasn't in the pipeline yet, it wasn't in the Seder Yishtalshlus, and that's called Maila de Tefillah. That's really the quality that usually Tefillah is reserved for. And Afal Pikein, who lo Tefillah. Nonetheless, it's not davening, it's not a bakasha, it's not a request, which could be answered in the affirmative or the negative. Ela bracha b'derech tzivoy. It's rather a bracha, which we said, well, how do you make a blessing? You should. Right? We're not negotiating here. It's a commandment. You should have children. You should have a shidduch. Say amen.
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 So this is b'derech tzivoy. It's a command.
Yeah.
V'al derech. Okay, so now we're going on a little bit. And this type of quality, which has both tefillah and bracha mailas, it's al derech de'isa b'Yerushalmi. This is what we find in the Gemara of Yerushalmi ala pasuk v'tikzor omer v'yakim lacha. So it says in Sefer Iyov that Tigzar Omer, that Hashem is going to decree a statement. V'yakim lacha, and the way we're going to translate this is, but it's going to be established for you, meaning, right? So this is the simple pasuk is what it is, but we're learning the drasha from the Yerushalmi right now. So it says, afilu hu, even if he, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Omer Achein, At Omer Achein, even if Hashem says one thing and you say another thing, in other words, read back to the pasuk, Tigzor Omer, means he decrees a statement, right? Which means he says one thing, but you say another thing. Didach kaima, didi lo kaima. Yours, says Hashem, will be fulfilled and established. Mine will not be. And that's what it says, V'yakam lecha, and I will establish it for you. So it's a little bit funny in the words, but read those words again. Tigzor Omer, he's going to decree a statement, says Hashem is going to decree a certain, but it will be established for you. In other words, instead of Hashem's statement being decreed, your statement will be decreed. Hashem is going to nullify his decree. Why is this? That Hashem is willing to nullify his decree before the decree of a Tzadik. It's because the Tzadik is mamshich ratzon chadash. So we find this already idea in the Yerushalmi.
Right.
That's because the Tzadik is able to bring forth a brand new will from Hashem. Hamayla de tefillah, which is the quality of davening, as we said. Right? Hashem already has in mind another thing, but comes along the Tzadik and he says something else. Hashem is going to undo what he wanted and bring forth the Tzadik's will. Why? Because the Tzadik has his hands on the trigger, that he knows how to make Hashem have a new will. V'ofen bittul hagezerah, how does he nullify the decree? Lo ayidei bakasha, he doesn't ask, he decrees, right? Ela ayidei gezeras tzaddik. It's powerful stuff here. This is big stuff. The tzaddik, that's what a tzaddik is mamash, the rumo shel olam. What he can do is he can just completely change Hashem's mind, and not by asking, by telling. This is a tzaddik. That's a good question. We were describing chassid. So when we're saying chassid all this time, first of all, we've now just shifted gears that a chassid is not one of us, right? It's a level of a tzaddik. So actually, what we're describing, what we'll go on to describe, is that the chassid is even higher than the tzaddik. Yeah. Right?
How do we become a chassid?
First you have to become a tzaddik, and then we'll talk from there. I'm serious. A chassid is a higher level of a tzaddik.
Yeah.
But
Right?
isn't a tzaddik's will like completely aligned with Hashem? So why would he even how would he even have a different will than Hashem? Because doesn't that make him a tzaddik? Like he has the same will as Hashem.
Dude.
Okay, but what's that?
What's your opinion what happened when it argued against Hashem?
Yeah.
No, but he's saying we see that it's true, but how is it possible?
Yeah, it's just like a strange thing.
I'll tell you.
That changed unless somebody vocalized it.
Mochon shivtacha yishgiach. There's a pasuk in Tehillim.
Yeah.
I think it's like in Tehillim 30, 31, I think.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But it says, Makom shivtacha hishgiach. It says, from the place of your dwelling, you oversee everything. Right? It's Rosh Tevos Moshe. So the idea is that Hashem is the Hakadosh Baruch Hu, which is what he calls him here. Kadosh means it's sort of removed, right? Yeah. He's the state of Kadosh Baruch Hu. But so there's that's the level of Hashem is as a makif. Hashem exists in when we call Das Elyon, Das Tachton. He exists in a realm where he's beyond the worlds. He can also exist in a realm where he's in the worlds. In other words, why was it that in Mitzrayim it took Hashem so long to hear our cries?
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
He says finally he heard our cries. We screamed out and he heard us. Where was he for the 210 years?
Right.
So there's a level of Hashem that doesn't hear our cries. Because he's in a state of makif, the world doesn't even exist to him at that level in a certain sense. He's not aware of it, it's so insignificant. Then there's of course a level of Hashem which is a mamali kolomim. He's panemius, he comes in, of course, he's making us, and he's making us with these experiences of a human being in olam hazeh, having pains, right? Or having whatever we're having.
Yeah,
so
joy.
there's also a perspective of Hashem inside of this world. There's two perspectives that he has. They're happening simultaneously. The perspective of Hashem from inside the world is makom shivtecha yishkiach. The place of your dwelling you also oversee, and that's Rosh Tevos Moshe. So Moshe Rabbeinu is the eyes of Hashem from our perspective. So he has to, so to speak, argue with the eyes of Hashem from the perspective of the makif, because they're having two completely different experiences.
Right,
so there's a gezerah mitzad, the level of what Hashem is giving to the world without sort of feeling its own experience.
Right.
And because there's the level of Hashem which is beyond their experience. Let's face it.
But
there's also a level of the tzaddik who's in the world experiencing Hashem and totally bottled to Hashem's will, but inside of our experience.
Right.
So he's having a conversation with himself.
I don't know if you want to go in this direction. This kind of
I don't know if I wanted to go in that direction.
I don't know if I want to go in that direction. But the only thing I see with that is that we say every day that Hashem is one. Like I don't know how you can split Hashem in two places.
Because it's not so to speak two Hashems. God forbid.
Right.
It's just that there's Hashem himself made a scenario where even though the Adam is also one, but you have mind and you have heart inside of you, right?
Okay.
Now the truth is Hashem is a true unity at the level where there's not even distinctions inside of that unity.
Right.
But at that level there's also no world, right? So at the level, and the truth is we're going to maintain that. There is no world, right? In other words, the deepest reality is that everything is in a state of absolute bittul to the Orein Sof, and that's Hashem Echad, and that's what we're supposed to sit here and meditate and realize that emes.
Right.
But the problem is that Hashem is hiding that emes from us on a daily, regular basis.
Right.
So even though in fact He is one without parts, right? He has theoretical parts inside of Him, which as far as He's concerned are in a state of total bittul, but as far as we're concerned are not. So we experience parts, right? That's the whole problem. Because we experience ourselves in a duality, we need Hashem, someone throw me a line. Don't you experience us in this duality as well? You made us here. So He says, actually I do. I gave you a tzaddik named Moshe Rabbeinu. He totally experiences your problem. But don't worry, he's also me. So I can basically vouch for you while you're in that state of affairs, and I change my decrees. I hear you. This is the whole Indian of. It's tough because there's something called a tzimtzum, and the tzimtzum does a funny thing. It makes us experience a reality which is not Hashem's true reality.
Right.
But that itself is part of Hashem's true reality.
Right.
So there's a slight
true reality, and there's our reality in there, but there's only Hashem.
In other words, we have this experience, but what we don't realize is that this experience is, in truth, in a state of bitul matzias. We're not feeling that, but it's there. So it doesn't make a blemish on Hashem's true oneness, because the reality of the situation is not as we see it. But He created this reality because He desires avoda and adir b'tach toim and free choice. So we have to deal with this reality.
Right.
And because we have to deal with this reality, we have a Moshe Rabbeinu who feels our experience of the reality, and therefore is busy changing Hashem's gezeras.
Was Moshe a tzaddik or a chassid?
He was a tzaddik, I think.
He was a chassid.
He was a chassid, it says.
He was a chassid.
Yeah, it says he was a chassid.
For sure he's a chassid. You think you're going to say Moshe Rabbeinu was a chassid?
He definitely went to the mikveh.
No, but Medrash says he was a chassid.
Yeah, for sure.
Brought down.
Moshe must have had all the milas.
He created the definitions.
We're going to see that it's not so clear. We're going to delineate in this mimer 3 levels. Moshe, Shlomo, Mashiach.
Right.
So Moshe, Shlomo, Mashiach. That's where we're going with this. So in that capacity, even though everything comes from Moshe, and you can't say he's lacking anything, not all the qualities manifest themselves in Moshe as he was as Moshe. Like we learned not long ago, probably was long ago, but we learned in a mimer, Ba'atat Tetzaveh, from the last mimer of the Rabbi, if you recall, he said Mordechai had certain qualities that Moshe did not have. Even though Moshe had them, he only had them in potential. But Mordechai brought them out in a way of actuality. What was that? The power of Mesiras Nefesh. Simply, Moshe did not get faced with a generation of annihilation of the Jews, in that sense, that Mordechai did. So the ability to bring Jews to a level of Mesiras Nefesh, that they were all willing to die for Hashem, Moshe had it in him, but he didn't actually manifest it. So the same thing can be true here. Certainly Moshe was a chassid, but the true level of chassidecha yivarchucha is something shaykh to chassidus. The chassidic Rabbi and Mashiach. Okay, so Baruch, calm down.
Hey, I'm pretty calm, I think.
I'm joking. Anyway,
I mean,
you're getting me all excited, man.
Yeah.
All right, so on we go. So anyway, the Maila here is that the Tzadik can mavato the gezer of Hashem. How does he do it? Not by requesting, but by demanding, by making his own gezerah, which of course is the Mailas HaBracha. That's the quality of bracha, which is b'derech tzivoy, which is by way of command. Okay, let's go on to Dalit.
Is Hashem's will part of Seder Shtalshlus?
No, will in general is Kesser, which is beyond the Seder Shtalshlus.
But like it would be, but it's not part of Ein Sof, it's part of Kesser. Like Arich.
Right. Well, that's the point. It's either Arich or Atik. Arich they're both beyond the Seder Shtalshlus. Arich is already shayach to the Seder Shtalshlus, which means there's the theoretical spheros which are going to manifest, and that could be called will. But then there's many levels of the will, which is like the hidden will beyond higher and higher.
But within Hashem's seichel is in like the upper levels of the Seder Shtalshlus, right?
In the Seder Shtalshlus, I mean.
Hashem's seichel, because the Ratzon would be above the seichel.
Yeah, but what's your question exactly?
My question is like, where is this gezer coming from that he would have?
Hashem's gezer is the will. It might come into the Seder Shtalshlus. In other words, once he has his decree, he'll attach reasons for it, he'll attach emotions for it. That's already the Seder Shtalshlus. But the will itself is from beyond the Seder Shtalshlus, from the Kesser. And therefore that's where the Tzadik also accesses in order to make a new will. Mamshich ba'amaimer, Dalit. So when he says Mamshich ba'amaimer, he's talking about, we're continuing explaining the Rebbe Rashav's Maimer. Shamshacha sha'idei bracha de chasidecha, that this which is drawn down through the blessing of the chasid is al derech hamshacha sha'idei Torah. He compares it to how we draw bracha down through Torah learning in general.
Hamshacha is draw?
Hamshacha means to draw. Key word there. Probably in every Maimer about 60 times. Very important word. The al yedei Torah naisa shinoi v'chidish ba'olam. And why is it compared to Torah learning their bracha? Because through Torah learning, you actually change the world. You make a change and a novelty, a chiddush, into the world.
So cool.
Hainu shenaisa davar chadash, you make something new, shelo hayagam b'shoresh u'makar ha'olam. Something new which was not even yet in the source and the root of the world. That's Torah, because where's Torah come from? Right? Stalkel b'raisu bara alma. It says he looked into the Torah and created the world. By definition, the Torah is beyond the world. So whatever is in the world,
What is the Torah?
it's Hashem's. What's that?
Is it this Torah?
Yeah, it's this Torah. In other words, when you read it, when you learn it, right? So you're look in the Torah itself. It has, Maaseh Bereshis, right? The beginning of the Torah talks about the creation of the world.
Yeah, that part.
So the creation of the world is a product of the Torah, right? But when we learn Torah, usually we're not learning necessarily about the creation of the world. We're learning about the Dinei Torah, Sipurei Maisios. We're learning Torah, not so to speak like about the natural laws.
History, really.
Even the history of Torah is stories about Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov.
Exactly.
But they're not merely characters that exist in the world as you know. Right? There's Pshat, Remesh, Drush, and Sod.
Yeah.
So on the Pshat level, we're learning some kind of a history lesson. That is true. But for sure, the Torah is not there to just delineate the history of the world, because if it does, it's a pretty horrible history book. I mean, there's a lot of things it missed out on, and a lot of strange ways that it brought down history. It's everything in the Torah is lashon hora. It's a lesson, which means we're learning about Avram. We're also learning all the ways that Avram acted and how to be a mensch. And we're also learning all the halachas that we can learn from how Avram behaved. And we're also learning the secret, the sod of how Avram represents Chesed, Yitzchak is Torah. So we're learning these things. We're learning Pshat, Remesh, Drush, and Sod. We're learning things which are Hashem's will and wisdom.
How did God create the world with the Torah?
Because one of the things that the Torah can do, right? It's not the ultimate thing that the Torah can do. It's the chitzonius of the Torah, in fact. But that from it comes out creation. No, it's the blueprints for creation. Right? But it's also much more than the blueprints for creation. So therefore, when you learn it, and as I said, not when you're learning it, so to speak, you're not learning about science. You're not learning about the aspects of world that the Torah is responsible for, because the Torah is responsible for everything, right? If you're learning science, you're learning physics, learning geometry, you're also learning Torah. But when we're talking about learning Torah, you're learning the Torah which is beyond creation, because all the laws of the Torah are beyond creation. So therefore, when you do that, you're bringing a certain energy which is beyond creation into the world. Therefore, you're making a novelty in the world, a chiddush.
Yesterday, Rabbi Ginsburg gave a video call. He was talking about that.
See, even Rabbi Ginsburg was talking about that.
It's interesting, it's the blueprints for creation and it's beyond creation at the same time.
Right. Well, the chitzonius of the Torah is the blueprints of creation, and the panemius of the Torah is far beyond.
Gotcha.
That's why the Torah. That's why when you begin the Torah, right, it starts with creation. What does Rashi says right away? Lo haya Torah laschilem lachodesh hazeh lachem. The Torah should not start here, says Rashi. It should start with achodesh hazeh lachem. It should start from the first mitzvah, because this is the chitzonius of the Torah. Let's start with what the Torah really is. But as most things, you have to start with the chitzonius, and in order to prepare the kli and make room for the panemius. So that's the same with the order of the Torah. So anyway, when you learn this bracha of the Chassid is similar to Torah learning, because just like when you learn Torah, you draw down something new into creation that was not there before.
It's already new. It's just something that.
It's actually
concealed.
completely new.
Completely new. It's not something that was concealed.
Well, okay, I'm not opposed to saying it was concealed, but it was concealed in a place which is beyond the world. So it's brand new to the world, right? Vashinoi v'achiddush hu lo b'derech b'kasha. And similarly, when you make this change, when you bring this new energy into the world, you might not see it, by the way, but in other words, sometimes some scholars, we're going to see in a second, you can see in the world the effect of their Torah learning, that they're mamash making miracles. Like miracles, they said in Lubavitch, miracles are falling all over the place like rain. But even if you don't see it, you just sit here and learn Torah. What are you doing? Just like you said a moment ago, either you're speaking words of Torah or you're speaking other words. And one way or the other, you're drawing energy into your vessel. You're either drawing energy into your vessel from a place of worldliness and potentially klippa, or you're drawing place into your vessel from beyond the world, from Torah. When you're drawing something from beyond the world, that's a chiddush for the world, whether you see it or don't see it. right? Because that is light, which is not part of the world. It's Torah light. It's God light. So he says, but the chiddush is lo b'derech bakasha k'b'tefila. When you learn Torah, you're not asking Hashem, do me a favor, bring some light, which is completely beyond the world, into the world. That's not how you accomplish it. You just do it. B'derech mamela. So it's kind of like the bracha of the Chasidecha, where you don't have to ask to get your hands on this light which is beyond creation. You just learn Torah and it happens by itself. And of course, when it comes to us, we don't really experience that, we don't really see that. That's why the Alter Rebbe gives us a certain advice. Every hour, stop learning and meditate and realize that your mom is dealing with a Dvar Hashem over here. Get a grip. Right? We have to sort of remind ourselves. But when it comes to the Alter Rebbe Tanya, when it comes to the Rashbi, who he brings, Torah. If there's a story in the Zohar that says one day the world needed rain, it was a drought, and they went to the Rashbi, and they said, the world needs rain, and he says, and he started saying a drasha about the words which have nothing to do with rain. How wonderful when brothers sit together. Right? Yeah. Then he starts saying all kinds of Kabbalah on the matter, and it rained. Right? In other words, I'm sure before they got to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, plenty of people were fasting and davening and you know. But when they came to Rabbi Shimon, he just said a few psukim in Torah. And not only did he say a few psukim in Torah, he said psukim in Torah that had nothing to do with rain. Right? In order so there to be a rainfall, after it was decreed, that it should be a drought, an absence of rain. Who are they? You have to bring for sure a new will. The will of the world was no rain. Hashem had already pretty much established that it was a drought. In order to get rain, you have to undo Hashem's will. You have to make a new will. Nevertheless, through saying Torah, it came out this new will automatically, without any toil whatsoever. Yeah. Yes, that's what we've been saying.
I know.
Yeah, it's shocking.
Or his higher will is revealed.
He's saying it's a new will. In other words, that it really is new in the fact that that's not what he was thinking, right? Because again, when it comes to the Seder Ishtalshlus, it's not necessarily inside the Or Ein Sof. You can't really say anything just sitting in there, because it's pashut, simplistic oneness. So whatever comes out is like the beginning of all things, right? In other words, that's what there is. There's not something inside which is hiding in a deeper place, because there's nothing inside. It's like yesh ma'ayin. So for him to create a new will, he has to recreate the entire world in a brand new way he wasn't creating a second ago. It's not that he had a higher will per se tucked in there somewhere.
Right, but didn't we see before that it was the gezeras that left that made it that it
wasn't raining?
Yeah.
But that already came out.
Oh, right.
So let's say, for example, like Avram was saying, that gezerah is the will, it's like the keser. He's already extended himself into a certain direction. Right. And if he's going to extend himself into a different direction, he has to go back into the infinite pool and change the direction and bring out a brand new direction. The Yesh Lomar. And we want to say the Masha Kasuba Maimer. That it says in the Maimer, which Maimer the Rebbe Rashabs. That this that you draw down through the blessing of the Chassid is Kamo Amshacha Sha'agdei Torah, which we just compared. It's like learning Torah. Hu lo rach bichdei lavi dugma. He doesn't just bring this to bring an example. Mamshacha sheyesh ba shtei mailos. To show, here's another example of some type of hamshacha that has both qualities of reaching the level of tefillah and yet being in a way of command. Right? Of tefillah and bracha. Elagam lefisha al yedei dugma zu.
What do you mean by an example?
In other words, chasidechi b'rachucha, we said has two milas. Bracha and tefillah together. Yeah. And then he says, and that's like Torah. So now the Rebbe is analyzing the Rebbe.
For an example,
he's analyzing the Rebbe Rashab's Maimer.
So they have the same power?
And he's saying, he's not just bringing an example to explain to you. He already explained to you. In other words, he doesn't need an example to explain. You get it. The fact that he's bringing this new development regarding how Torah is like that as well, it's the feast that all they do mazu. It's because through this example of Torah, misvasev biur beilu de chasidechi b'rechucha. He's adding something to the explanation of what is Chasidachi V'Rachucha. In other words, it's not just Stam, Torah also joins the milas of Tefillah and Bracha, but Torah has some new add-on which gives further insight into what the Bracha of the Chasidecha is, as we'll explain. V'Inyanu, and to explain, it's explained in the Likutei Torah from the Alter Rebbe regarding the awesome miracles Sha'asu Kama Tanaim V'Amarayim that were made by many Tanaim and Amarayim. Right? They were miracle workers, all of them. And he says, Kamo Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, a local. Right? The father-in-law of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is buried in Sfas here.
This is father,
Father-in-law, Pinchas ben Yair. Sha'amar Ginai Nahara Chaluk Limemecha. He said the famous story. He was going on a mission for Pidyon Shvoim. He was always doing this kind of work. He was going to redeem captives, and he came upon a river which was blocking his path. And he said, "Okay, Ginai." The name of the river was Ginai Nahara, River Ginai. Split your waters, please. Right? And it did. And not only did it split his waters, and then basically he was traveling with someone else who was carrying, wheat for matzahs, and he didn't want to get it wet, so he says, split for him also. So it split again. And then there was a non-Jewish Arab merchant who was like going with them and serving them. He said, split for him also. So split again. And he had no problem here. He was just splitting the sea, mamash, over and over and over again. This is like a real Maisa that took place.
Did Moshe split the sea, or did Hashem split the sea?
That is the question. That is the question.
No, I mean what we're saying basically is that Moshe had in other words, Hashem had a plan that there should be a sea. Hashem made the sea, but his tzaddik comes and undoes his decrees. So I mean, of course, the tzaddik is nothing but Hashem. We're saying the tzaddik is changing the will of Hashem. So that's the same thing with Moshe.
But Hashem has to be willing to let his will be changed.
Well, he is, because of the power of the tzaddik. Right? The tzaddik has like sort of keys to the kingdom. He can go and change his tati's mind. So again, when he does it, it is Hashem's power that he's wielding. But he gives Hashem a new will that Hashem didn't originally have. So that comes from the power of the tzaddik. You could say the tzaddik is sort of like, he has his control in the will of Hashem. Right? So we can make Hashem have a new will. It's a very deep thing.
Hashem knows what's going to happen.
Hashem knows what's going to happen. I don't have a problem with that. But Hashem wouldn't have made that happen were it not for the decision of the tzaddik.
Out of the love for tzaddik, he just changes. Like your kid can come to you and you just like so overwhelmed by your son.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. So, anyway, he says split the river. And how did he do it? He didn't. It's because he was just so malei Torah. He was just a walking Torah. Because of their occupation in Torah, he simply had at his disposal levels of the Or Ein Sof which was beyond the Ishtalshlus. So even though according to the Ishtalshlus there was a river there, he's just walking beyond the Ishtalshlus. Anything which is in the stated reality is not a problem for him to undo, because he's living in a realm which is beyond the rules of this world. He's from the Or Ein Sof. Because of his Torah is just living inside of him. The Torah comes from there.
So Moses hit the rock rather than speaking to him, so he was in essence overriding Hashem's will.
That was like a sin, though, no?
But that was right.
That went the opposite direction.
Whatever was for him. Yeah, right.
Okay, but that's honestly like it's a much longer conversation. We addressed that a few times in here, but I'm not sure if I want to go over there. But it's a similar thing. It's a similar thing though. In other words, since I'll just put it like this in short, because it's triggered my interest. But in truth, a tzaddik cannot sin. So even though we do call sins on almost every tzaddik, he has like his thing that he did wrong, right? But of course, Al Pi Chasidus, like 101 in Tanya, they don't even have a Yetzer Hara. It's not even in their potentiality to go against the will of Hashem. So even their sin is actually an act of divine, of divine will. But it's in like a sort of hidden level of divine will a way of explaining it in simple, is opposed to being from the levels of Hashem's light, which is revelation. It's from His kelim, which is restriction, which hides the light. It's a sort of like will that is not clear. So the inner hidden will, you could say. So even that, the fact that He sort of enacted a different will of what Hashem had decided, that too is an undoing of Hashem's revealed will and a bringing forward of Hashem's hidden will, which might look like the contrary of Hashem's will. That's why we call it a sin, but it's actually sort of the hidden will. It's a different type of godliness, because kelim are also elukus in the world of Atzilus. They're not, the kelim of Bria, Yitzir, and Asiya, they hide on Hashem. But the kelim of Atzilus, they themselves are godly revelations. It's just a different form of godly revelation. So it's exactly the same thing as what we're talking about here, but it's just like a different breed of it. In short, that is a long conversation. But Al Pizeh, according to what we're saying here, Gam Amshach Sha'al de Esek HaTorah de Kol Tanaim V'Amarayim Hayu Shnei Inyanim Ma'ilo Sanal. So according to Pinchas Ben Yair was for sure one of the greats, but on the other hand, he was also just one of the Tanaim. I mean, they were all one of the greats, right? So we see from here the fact that he had this koach to just walk through the river and split it 3 times in a row, no problem, shows us that all of these Tanaim V'Amarayim had the power of both tefillah and bracha in one. They could reach to the infinite heights and access it without asking. Do you want to ask a question?
There's a context when you're splitting the river. There's any connection with there's over there by Mashiach. The splitting the river.
Yeah. I mean, every splitting of the river, I'm sure, is connected. That's why he brings Moshe and Mashiach. He was in the game. Over there in the Gemara, right there, it says, wait a second, he split the river 3 times. Moshe only split it once. It says that in the Gemara. It's like there's a clear connection. So it's a big deal to split a river. Yaakov Avinu also split the river when he came to in our parsha. Sha'al Yidei Esek HaTorah. No, he was going actually the other way. He was going to Haran. Al Yidei Esek HaTorah Shelahem. Through their learning, you could see that they created. Okay, even by us, we don't see it. We don't have the power to bring it to manifestation. But because we're not really mamish living only Torah. You know, inside of our Torah is mixed in shmutz. But by occupying. So they were able to bring a chiddush and a change in the world. Chiddush amiti, a true chiddush, which is not even in the source or the root of the world.
We didn't need it.
Oh no, you don't have the copy? No, that's a major bummer right there.
You can manage 10 minutes.
Yeah, all right, we'll do a 10-minute managing situation. I apologize for that. Got ahead of myself. I wasn't planning to go so fast. Okay, so anyway, we'll just use our ears. So we see that they were maybe, it's a true chiddush, which was not even in the source of creation, because as far as the creation was concerned, that what was the claim of the river actually? The claim of the river was when he came and said, "Split your rivers." First, the river said no, because the river said, "Excuse me, I'm doing the will of Hashem." It actually says that in there. Ani osir ratzon koni, I'm doing the will of my Maker. In other words, what does this show? The will of Hashem was to have this river flowing, right? So he says, if you don't do my will, I guarantee you, your waters will flow no more. Like that's what he says. He's like, you're out of here. You're not going to be a river if you don't do what I say. He scared the river. So
Okay.
how you could have a conversation with a river? No one's talking about that miracle. But that's happening.
About that last time.
I'm sorry, Yom Tov was talking about that. He picks up on the supernatural very, very well.
Yeah.
But so the point is that you see that the river claimed that it was doing the will of Hashem, which means there was already a will in place that was the worldly will. So this was a brand new will. And he says, "Kamocha lukas anar shushinu v'chiddush gam lagabi shorsho u'makora dahanar." It's a chiddush even as far as the source of the river is concerned. Look, that's exactly what he brings down in the footnote. That the claim of the river was ani olech lasos rotzon koni. I'm going to do the will of my Maker. Leave me alone. So we see that it's has the mila of tefillah. What's the mila of tefillah? Going beyond the seder ishtalshlus. changing the world. Vashinoi naisa lo aide bakasha, but it didn't happen by way of request, but by tzivoy of Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair. He commanded it, he demanded it, which is the maila of bracha, which is by way of tzivoy, a command. So you see, all the Amoraim, Batanoim, they all seemingly had this power of combining these two qualities through their Torah. So now, what was the Rashbi's unique chiddush? That by him learning Torah, he was able to make it rain, right? What was the chiddush in that over and above the awesome miracles that were made by many Tanoim and Amoraim by their occupation in Torah?
Maybe like he said something that had nothing to do with the rain.
Yes, that's one part of it, and there's another part of it.
Hashem does anything he wants.
He caused Yesh Me'ayin.
Because Yesh Me'ayin,
The splitting of the rivers is just splitting it.
the truth is that the splitting of the river in Tanya is the example used in this world for the closest thing that can possibly come to Yesh Me'ayin. Because just like Yesh Me'ayin is a constant koach going against, in order to bring existence into a state of non-existence, is a constant level of koach maintaining itself against the natural realm, because the natural realm is to not have existence. So for Hashem to put existence into being, he has to continuously exert something which is beyond his nature. So the splitting of the sea is an example used to compare to that, because the natural nature of the water is to be in a state of flowing in gravity. For it to stand like a wall, there has to be a constant force into it, like Yesh Ma'ayin, which like puts a continuous energy into. So it's actually
say in Tanya that's
it's still
wind.
Yeah, it's not Yesh Ma'ayin, but it's as close as you can come to Yesh Ma'ayin. So I would say even more than making it rain in that capacity, right? But there's something else. You know, yes, as you said. What did you say? He was nothing to do with rain.
Yeah, he said something.
And there's also that the shinoi ba'olam sha'asu kol tanaim ba'amoraim, the change in the world that was made by all of the scholars, the tanaim and amoraim, is aydei tzivoy v'agazera shalahem. It's because they commanded it and decreed. He demanded of the river to split its sea. Like Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, he commanded and decreed that the river should split its waters. But the chiddush of the falling of the rain by the saying of Torah of the Rashbi is what? That even though the drush that he said had no commandment whatsoever, right? He just sat there and said, "Hini matov manai," right? He didn't talk about rain. They asked him for rain, and he went into some other topic and started darshaning Hasidus for them, right? He didn't even have a remez of a hint of talking about rain. Mikom makom, or not only talking about rain, but decreeing that there should be rain. Nonetheless, just by saying Torah, it came down rain. So what are we trying to say here? That he didn't have to even command. He didn't even have to even decree. The others were for sure able to attach themselves to a level beyond nature, beyond the Seder Ishtalshlus, but by way of demanding it, at least they had to assert that they want there to be some change in the Seder Ishtalshlus. The Rashbi didn't even deal with it. He just carried on his merry way, and automatically this change in the Seder Ishtalshlus took place because he accessed.
But it wasn't through his thought?
He wasn't even thinking about rain. It was through his Torah. It was absolutely 100% through his deeds, right? He said Torah. And the Torah brought rain. But he didn't say there should be rain. He didn't basically reckon with Hashem's will at all. He just changed it automatically by saying Torah. We don't really know the significance of that just yet, but we're just clarifying the positions here. That Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was on a completely higher level than all the other Tanoim Ba'amarim, which is known. It says they all actually got their entire chayas and life force from him. Wow. He was literally the engine of the entire, all of the Tanoim that came from him.
Not Rabbi Meir?
That's awesome.
Not Rabbi Meir.
Not Rabbi Akiva?
Not even Rabbi Akiva. No. Right? Rabbi Akiva, it says that there's a whole Maisa. I mean, Rabbi Akiva was his teacher.
Right.
But the truth is that, sometimes you could have Amram was also Moshe's teacher. I mean, to some degree, you have sometimes that the son can outdo the father. The teacher can be outdone by a student. He says, "Yafa koach haben min ha'af." So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai When you mentioned Rabbi Meir, there's actually a story regarding that. Rabbi Meir was another student of Rabbi Akiva. He was the one who basically was responsible for all the writings of the Mishnah. Rabbi Meir Balanes. Yeah. So it says that he got smicha from Rabbi Akiva first, before Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And Rabbi Shimon was kind of bummed out about it. And because Rabbi Shimon basically was knew who he was, and he was kind of didn't understand his actions of his teacher. So Rabbi Akiva came to him privately. He says, "Listen, my son, it's sufficient that I and your maker know your greatness. No one else has to know." In other words, that even in a revealed way, Rabbi Meir sort of took a sort of mantle of leadership. That was all just sort of what the world was seeing to a certain degree. But the reality was there was no one like Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon was greater than Moshe Rabbeinu on certain levels. Moshe Rabbeinu, it says, brought nigla of Torah into the world, and Shimon Bar Yochai brought another Matan Torah, but the Matan Torah Panimius Torah. He was like a Matan Torah as well, right? But he was the Matan Torah Panimius Torah. So it was like a one-time event, just like you have a Moshe Rabbeinu. The world went from pre-Torah to Torah. So too, at Shimon Bar Yochai, the world went from the Panimius Torah to Panimius Torah.
It's cool to think these guys are like engines, like spiritual engines. Yeah.
So again, there's a whole you're talking about thousands of years later. So a new development definitely ensued. But even that development, he was exactly. And at the end of the day, what he said was, when my sefer will be finally understood, then Mashiach will come. That's what the Rashbi said. He said, with this sefer, with this sefer, Yifkun min galusa barachim. The Jewish people are going, yes, the Zohar, the Jewish people are going to go out of Galus with love. But it says it has to be an ofen, the Isparnasun. It has to be a way that they can actually understand it. So that way of actually understanding didn't happen until the Arizal, the Baal Shem Tov, the Alter Rebbe. But ultimately, all they're doing is explaining what the Rashbi is. Last line. According to this, we can say that this that he brings in the Maimer an example of the example of rain coming down through the saying of Torah, right? Is in order to hint that through this there's an hamshacha, the hamshacha habracha the chasidachi v'rachucha. This is truly the level of the hamshacha of chasidachi v'rachucha. And again, we said a moment ago, this is just the final word here. He didn't just bring the example of saying Torah had the milah of accessing the dual nature of tefillah and bracha just to explain it again. He brought the example of the Torah of the Rashbi, saying Torah automatically brought rain into the world, right? Because he was trying to add something to the definition of chasidachi v'rachucha. And this is what he was adding. The stam tanoim and amaroim were able to access a combination of Torah and tefillah, because they could also split the sea without asking for it. But Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai could split the sea without even mentioning it. And that is why the Rebbe Rashab brought that analogy, because that's more akin to what Chasidecha v'Rachucha is than all the other Tanaim v'Amoraim. It's that you don't even have to ask. The Chassid is like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. He's the first Chassid, right? Where he doesn't even have to mention anything. He doesn't have to decree and try and nullify Hashem's will. He's going to sit here and say a drasha in Torah, and he's going to automatically access the level of tefillah and bring it down through bracha, but without even decreeing. So that's the true. That's why the Rebbe Rashab brings that. This is all the Rebbe's analysis, of course, of the Maimer, because he's trying to elucidate a little further minutia of what the Chasidecha Yivrachucha really is. That it doesn't even require a tzivo. It doesn't even require a command or a gezerah.
So how does the Chassid do it?
You want to know?
We stand in front of a sensitive
Come outside. I'll show you.
It opens up by itself.
No, but
Yeah.
like,
Brush
you
me
said
when
that
it stands in front of the
it's
water.
Exactly.
The other Amoraim, but not Rabbi Shimon,
so
right?
what, just like
He said Torah. But because of his because of his level, right? They all said Torah. But because of who he was, he was able to achieve that.
You can also say Hashem